Hi everyone, I'm Frederico Salmi. I'm a researcher from Rio Grande do Sul Federal University, and I'm here to present to you a part of a preliminary results of my project. Here, climate ethics, based on conviviality theory in a Brazilian perspective, related to climate initiative and policies. So, before we start, let's talk a little bit from where I'm talking about.
So, let's start. My project is based on sociological perspectives, so I bring here Stephen Gardner reflection that argue climate change is fundamentally an ethical issue. And I say that because there is a lot of research like Iona Otto et al. That realized that most of the current climate instruments are based on technological or economical drivers. And I will show you how ethical dimension it's fundamental to formulate such climate initiatives and policies. As you can see right now, the current projections based on climate models tell us that we will reach 3 degrees Celsius for sure in the next decades. So, we say that climate ethicals can change the game. And how can we do that? If we put some climate ethical categories that we are modeling together with another researchers inside the climate policies process, it's possible to simulate it some better results. Let's see how. So let's move on to Brazil. In Brazil, there are a lot of new policymaker agents appearing in the political arena. But let's start with this one from state. This Brazilian law project is a very specific one that recognizes, and this is the word, and this is the category, recognize climate emergency situation. So when we get this, recognize that is a conviviality category, it's very clear that we have some new elements appearing inside climate policies context. So let's see how can we recognize another categories. For this conference, I picked two guiding questions to analyze Brazilian context. First, how does the nexus of climate related to biodiversity encourage cross-cutting conversation among political ecology? And the second question is, what kind of tensions might exist between these two perspectives, the ecological one and the moral human projects of conviviality in Brazil? So let's see how can we recognize the nexus and the tensions in order to try to understand the climate initiatives and policies process. So this is the model I proposed in my project. I understand here that any initiative or climate policy is a climate justice generator. It's like a machine. So in one hand, I have the climate ethics categories that are modeling. And once these categories inside the climate policies, I will analyze if these specific categories lead to a better world. And how can I see that? If these categories are really integrated inside a climate initiative or climate policy, and if this lead to a good way or a good life in terms of real results. Here are some examples of climate ethics in a conviviality perspective categories. For example, we will get this one, multiple decision clusters. This category means that we have a constellation of actors formulating such a climate policy. So, I get 22 instruments, I mean initiatives or policies, produced in Brazil in the last 2 years in order to analyze if we have this kind of multiple decision clusters inside these instruments. I mean, if they are planning to make a multiple decision space with these agents. And now I present to you the tensions between ecological and moral human conviviality. There are a lot of names to do that, but I will bring just one, anthropocentrism. But in Brazilian context, we are talking about agro and mining neo-extractivism. This is the main tensions right now between a Brazilian ecological conviviality and moral human projects of conviviality. So we can observe that some elements are inside these Brazilian climate policies. Let's see how can we identify these tensions too. So this is one of the first results of my research. This is how we get the tensions versus conviviality, these two levels of conviviality. I get the term supercluster in order to analyze, and I observed that there are more than 300 Brazilian entities formulating just 22 climate instruments. So there is a huge constellation here operating in the climate policies arena recently in Brazil. And when we analyze this kind of plurality, we see that there are some conviviality elements in this political arena operating in Brazil. This is another find of my research. As we can see, we don't have all of 27 states with fully approved climate policies. But we observed that in the last years, especially in the Amazon states that are covered by Amazon forest, we see superclusters entities that are operating and helping the state to formulate this kind of climate policies. So we see this term related directly to conviviality, that we have multiple actors operating together in spite of the fact they have sometimes a different point of views, but they are formulating together. So we see that this theoretical lens, the climate ethics based on conviviality theory, we can see these tensions very clear. at the same time that we can help to build a different climate policies. So this kind of work that we are doing here, we can operate it inside the climate policies process in two hands. In one hand, we can see the tensions, but on the other hand, we can provide good theoretical lens in order to have a practical human projects of conviviality. So now I will bring to you the final considerations. First, Brazilian climate ethics are promising to promote social and climate justice, mobilizing conviviality normatively like multiplicity of entities or actors. The second consideration that is this theoretical lens, it's applicable in the empirical context, especially for analyzing new climate instruments, forces and agents dynamics, as we saw in 22 climate instruments analyzing process that I brought to you. And third consideration, that we find out that this kind of super organized super clusters that we are operating with civil society, private organizations, and state together, including university centers of researches, start to make some real difference in the climate instruments in the political arena. And I bring here this image from the 16th century in order to present some kind of challenge that we have right now. How can we live together with the differences without slaughtering each other? So when we're talking about multi-species and climate policies, the challenge is real for this century. So this presentation is just a blink of what kind of contribution from the sociological and ethical approach we can do in this kind of pressing theme. So the issue of climate change has the power to drive political transformations in multi-scales and multi-territories. But at the same time, it's a huge opportunity for analytical and theoretical elaboration from the ethics and sociology approach. So this is kind of contribution, and we have a lot of new opportunities on the table. Let's do it. And I'd like to thank you all the groups that I belong, temas that studies technology, environmental and society from Rio Grande do Sul University. I'd like to thank you Amazon Face and CNPq. Thank you very much. Kwekatu rete. So let's see if we are able to live together without slaughtering each other. Thank you. Until the next adventure.